Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today for our live broadcast. Again, with our great partner here, John Lubinsky, with Lubinsky, the Lubinsky team with Remax. Great partner. We're at our golf tournament today, and hoping that you guys can join us or join into some of the social media feeds. So thanks so much for being here, John.
Thank you.
Hey, John.
Hey, Tony.
And of course, you know, everybody knows Tony. Tony is like our social media star now. One of his videos with 100,000 on YouTube. So anyways, today we're going to talk about kind of the state of the real estate market. John is in an awesome position to give us some expert opinion on it and to give you guys some really good insights. So John, you know, tell us a little bit about the current market. It seems like it's going bonkers, but give us the 411.
Yeah, you would have thought in March of 2020, everything would have gone downhill. We would have been in a housing bust.
Right.
Even, the lumber mills and stuff, they all did the same thing. They thought, we're going to stop building homes. Let's stop producing lumber, which you saw what happened there. All the lumber prices rocketed because they didn't have any. We all thought that. We all thought the housing market was going to be a slump for, at least until we got through the pandemic. But it did just the opposite. It kept people at home where they realized they had things that they lacked in their home, and decided they wanted to change that environment. Be at home a lot, they'd be working at home, they'd be at home with kids, whatever, that they wanted to change that environment a bit. So a lot of people went out and purchased homes. The problem was we have a very low inventory of homes already. It's been, for the last few years, it's been decreasing. Whereas we try to have a 6-month supply of homes at any given time to have a balanced market. And we've been down to the lowest I saw was 2 weeks of inventory. That means if nothing else came on the market, all homes on the market would be sold within 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so it became this vicious circle where people wanted to move, but they didn't want to sell their homes until they found a place. Well, if they didn't sell their home, then the next person in line didn't have a home to buy to sell their place. And so everybody kind of got stuck in this rut. But there's a lot of not only second-time buyers, but first-time buyers at the same time trying to get into this market. And we just didn't have the homes to support that. And you could look at history and say, well, in the last decade, we only built about 30% of the homes that we had been building in the previous decades.
Yeah.
Really decreased our inventory when we came to this time. And you could even say, hey, 2000, the 2008 to 2012 market, we weren't building homes because the market was so terrible, and that was a good part of it as well. So,
John, when you say real quick that it went down as low as 2 weeks, where are we at today?
I didn't look at today's stats, but I would say we've increased a little bit. We're probably a month and a half, 2 months, if I was to guess off the top of my head.
What has it been long-term wise?
Long-term wise, we've been anywhere from 2 to 3 months. Kind of what it's been for the last several years. So 2 weeks that's low. We're talking under 1,000 homes on the market at a given time.
I mean, it makes sense that there would be a lot of pressure for people to buy or even like upgrade because you've got low interest rates. Seems like rental rates have gone up a lot. So people are like, well, I can get a mortgage for lower than rent, or what. So like everything's almost like pushing people to buy or buy more, right?
100%. The rental rates are ridiculous right now, and you're absolutely right. You can buy a home for less than you can rent, and I've had several first-time buyers do that in the past year. So we're kind of fighting a little bit with that. I lost my train of thought on the second.
Fighting with the first-time home buyers
we threw you off.
Upgrading.
Oh, well, you were talking about interest rates too. Yeah, the interest rate. I mean, we never expected that. 2 years ago, we were up to about 5%. And during this pandemic, they dropped down. Today, I've seen them at 2.75 for a 30-year fix.
Yeah.
Incredible. We never thought we'd get down to those rates that followed the recession. And here we are,
A lot more house. For a less payment when the interest rates go down like that. I imagine that's driving some of the appreciation for people to bid up because they've got a certain budget of what they can afford.
Yeah, you look at that 30-year loan and you look at the interest you're saving by buying now versus buying later, you absolutely make up that overbid pretty easily.
Right. So do you think that, I mean, obviously this is speculation, and of course real estate is location, 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 but do you think the current appreciation is sustainable, or do you think we'll have a comeback down if interest rates were to go back up? Because even like the house we were talking about in Upper Arlington where Tony lives, just in the last 18 months went from like 280 to like almost 550. And that just seems phenomenal.
Yeah, they're crazy
in terms of appreciation. Yeah.
I mean, that's a big question mark. Nobody ever really can predict that. In Central Ohio, we've always been kind of insulated.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to do with the industry that we have and the population that we have. And that's helped us sustain. If I was to give my own opinion and my own prediction, I would say that we're probably going to plateau and not drop down. We'll stop increasing at the rate we've been. I mean, 15% in 1 year is not sustainable. When the average is 3 to 5% per year, we're just a little bit above inflation, if you will.
So we'll probably hit like a multi-year period where there's like not much appreciation until it gets back into levels.
That's what I would expect, but really it's only going to do that if we can increase inventory. So the builders got to keep building like crazy. That's the only way we're going to get out of it. With 40,000 people moving to Central Ohio, or an increase of 40,000 people per year in Central Ohio, and that's supposed to continue by predictions for 20 years.
Right. That's interesting to me. So it's like we think about the United States, and of course we've been pretty divided, I think, in terms of immigration and let's say, but we're really not an increasing population. So I guess you think about it in the United States, it's going to be more of there's winners like our market, Columbus, and there's going to be losers in other places where people are moving away from because we're not increasing in population.
Right. And there's a couple of things that have happened with that, because the losers are the places that had super high cost of living, because the companies are realizing they can move to somewhere like Central Ohio where we have very low cost of living, pay their employees less, and they're still just as happy. And we've got a really educated workforce here, having Ohio State as the big staple there. That's why we're seeing people like Google, Facebook, a couple other tech companies coming here.
Right. And that was going to be our next question, is like, what's different about the Columbus market? And I think you've hit it pretty solid there, is we've got a lot of people moving here because of that lower cost of living and demographics.
Yep. And we're kind of that big, small city, if you will, and people are kind of appreciate that. We do have a lot of the amenities that the big cities do. We're just not as crowded.
For sure. So we've heard this, I think, even before this current boom, but first-time home buyers are having a harder time. That seems like where it's the most crowded. So tell us a little bit about that and like why that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a little difficult. The biggest issue is that most buyers that are in the market for a while, or that have bought before, they have some equity in their house, or they have some cash reserves, and a first-time buyer doesn't necessarily have those things. So they're having to come up with the funds not only for a down payment, but to cover what we call an appraisal gap. So if the appraisal is less than the purchase price, there's some guarantee to the seller that they're going to get a certain amount above that appraisal. And when you do that, you have to add that directly to the top of whatever your down payment is. So a $200,000 house, you bid $220,000, it only appraises at $200,000. Well, you've got a minimum of 5% on that $200,000, and then you have to bring $20,000 on top of that for the gap coverage. And that's tough for most first-time buyers. So we see a lot of parents helping out with gift funds, or we've even seen in many cases, just to win the bids, parents or family are buying the home with cash and then basically refinancing it out to the child afterward, just to win the bids. And I'm always curious what that looks like, because now they are taking that risk. When it's cash, there is no appraisal. So when they turn around and sell it to their child, if the appraisal doesn't come up, I don't know how they're covering those things,
Right. Like they can have a mortgage and then a private loan on the side that they still owe them or something.
Yep, correct. And I don't know how forgiving the family is, and how that situation plays out.
Well, I was going to say, what I'm seeing with first-time buyers is people they're waiting for this downturn. and often, and you alluded to it before, and I think we agree with that.
Yeah.
We're going to plateau maybe, but it's not like things are going to come down, especially Central Ohio. They're not going to come down 20%. There's just too much pressure on how to do that. And so it's kind of a conundrum, if you don't own a property now, you are just falling further and further behind, it seems like, to catch up. And also,
yeah, absolutely,
how difficult that is if you're buying for the first time and don't have that family support or other resources.
Yeah, well, waiting is, I mean, like you said, waiting is tough because even if the prices plateau, the interest rates aren't going to. They're going to eventually go up, which means you are falling further and further behind. And that is difficult for that first-time buyer because everybody else that's already owns a house is at least gaining equity that they could pull to purchase the next house.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. I went on vacation and we were in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and even out there where nobody's really moving, they've had a lot of appreciation. And he was talking about how multiple of his friends were fixing up their property, or they had lots of land and they were cutting off pieces of it to sell it. And I mean, again, come on, they're not like like the most informed people out there, but like they were motivated to sell because they were afraid the bottom was going to fall out of this, and they hadn't seen anything like it in 10 or 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been remarkable.
Yeah. So what can first-time home buyers do to kind of improve their odds, or, make it where it's going to be more successful for them to be successful to secure that first house?
Yeah, first they need to understand that it may not be the first house they bid on that they win. And they've got to understand that losing out, the right thing will come. You just be patient. You got to persevere. You got to stay in there and stay in the game. But there are some things people are doing, such as writing in those appraisal gaps if they can, waiving the right to request remedy. So, they maintain, in my offers, they will always maintain the right to do inspections. There are, however, buyers that are getting desperate and waiving inspections. I highly recommend you don't do that. I haven't had any problem securing contracts for first-time buyers with inspections still in there, with the right to inspect. But I think a lot of it too has to do with, communication between you and the buyer, communication with the other agent and the other sellers as much as you can, to basically create that story and assure them that these buyers are the right buyers for them to select for the contract. There's, in any given home that's under $250,000, for a long time, we've been seeing 20 to 30 offers on that single house. One buyer is going to get it. So whatever you do to stand out is important. A lot of buyers write letters to sellers, and that's kind of getting a little bit of the kibosh right now, being that we have potential fair housing violations, because if anything in that letter is mentioned that would be race, color, religion, marital status, familial status, anything that falls into those fair housing discrimination laws, we could have an issue. So we're kind of getting away a little bit from the letters. But again, just at least telling the story to the listing agent and letting them understand that these buyers are in for the long haul and they're going to make it to the closing table is important.
So that first thing you mentioned, I didn't quite understand that, and maybe some of our viewers were, and where you said you write in the difference for what it appraises for. Is that say that again?
It's called an appraisal gap coverage. So whenever you purchase a home with a lender, the lender is going to send out an appraiser to that home. The appraiser's job is, as a third party that has no interest in this contract, their job is to figure out what the value of that home is, because the home is the collateral for the lender.
Right.
In a case where the lender's appraiser comes back with a value that's less than the purchase price, typically, according to our boilerplate contract, the buyer has the right to terminate that contract. Sellers don't want to see that happen. They know that they're getting a really good price for the home. If you give an offer at $250,000 on a house that's listed at $200,000, the seller understands the value of their property, or should understand the value of their property, and understand that $200,000 is what that house is worth. If I get an offer at $250,000, really the seller is sitting there in their head saying, well, that's fine and dandy, but the appraiser is going to come along and make this purchase price 200,000, or you guys are going to terminate on us. So to give them a sense of security, buyers are writing in there that if the house appraises for less than the purchase price, we're willing to pay a certain dollar figure over whatever that appraised value
So
is.
they do put a figure in there. So if it appraised for like 170 or something, that's
Right.
too low. Yeah.
Honestly, I always put a value there, but there are many buyers that are just completely waiving it altogether. I think that's a horrible mistake because an appraiser is one person.
Right.
The value of this home is determined by one person, and that could change by the appraiser's mood. It could change by any other influences, like what they had for breakfast, I always joke and say. But I mean, seriously, like an appraiser, two different appraisers could give you completely different values on that home. And if you get one that gives a really low value and you've said you're going to cover this appraisal regardless, you could bring a ton of cash to closing.
Yeah, for sure. So that brings me kind of my next question. With property values going up so fast and everything like that, are appraisers like keeping up with the market, like increasing? Because, I feel like a lot of them got burned after 2008, 2009. And so they're just more conservative,
For a while, for a while we were getting low appraisals and they were always having to bring in those gaps. Now they've gotten a lot better about it. There was a time where you would see, hey, you had a $10,000 appraisal gap coverage in your offer, and that appraisal would come in 10,000 below whatever that purchase price was. They knew that they could cover it. It gave security to the lender. And I can't tell you 100% that's what they were thinking, but it always seemed like, it's coming out right there. And now I'm seeing a lot of them come back at the purchase price. Now, this is a lot of mine. I can't say that for every agent, but
right.
I do a lot when I research a property and come up with a value or a price that I think is good for my client to make the offer. They have a pretty good understanding of what it's worth and where it's going to come in on that appraisal. Most of the time I'm pretty close, but I've been surprised. Some of those appraisals have come in much higher than I expected. So
awesome.
I guess they're making that change.
Well, good deal. I think the last question, it was kind of a funny one because I'm hearing more and more people talking about this. Like, I'm selling my house and I'm not fixing anything. I'm not going to stage. I'm not even going to clean up. I'm like going to leave articles hanging out in the garage. But the market's so hot, it's just going to sell anyways. What's your view on that?
A couple of thoughts. I think that's partially why our inventory is increasing because those turds are on the market that they didn't want to do anything. And secondly, if you want to capitalize on this market and how good it is, why would you not make the effort to get your house ready to capitalize on it? Why be an average sale when you can be one of these extraordinary sales in this market? Where we see the 50 to 70,000 over list price because the house is immaculate. Why not be one of those instead of being one that comes in at list price or sits on the market a couple of weeks and gets a little bit below list price? People want to walk into a house and be able to see themselves in it right away.
Yeah. John, along those lines, I think with such a seller's market, and this will be my last question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm starting to see some people spring up home, by sale by owner. And I know, and I've witnessed why that doesn't work out in somebody's best interest, but can you talk to that for a second?
Well, the first thing I always say is to somebody that's considering for sale by owner, I just ask them what their marketing plan is. And when they start looking at the ceiling, you go, yeah, how are you going to get this out to the public? Because, if you just stick a sign in the yard, gone are those days. The chance of the right buyer driving past your property and calling you from the sign are so slim. And then you get people that'll put it on Zillow and stuff. Well, people don't trust Zillow, so now they're going to question that, and they're going to turn around and call an agent anyhow to find out about that property. And guess what? As soon as they call an agent, well, now the agent represents the buyer, and the seller is already paying 3% to the buyer's agent. So the savings right there are already cut from 6% to 3%. They thought they were going to save 6%. The other thing is, you sell maybe 2-3 homes in your lifetime. somebody that's going for sale by owner, what do they really know about what the value of their home is? Yeah, they could turn around and sell it in a couple of days and tell everybody, all their friends and family, that they sold it in 2 days on their own. But then the house 2 doors down goes on the market and sells in 1 day and sells $20,000 higher than the other house. Well, now they've put themselves in a hole. I think it all just comes down to, hire somebody who knows what they're doing. You're not going to go run the electric in your house. You're not going to run the plumbing in your house. You're not going to do any of those things unless you know how to do it. You're going to hire somebody that knows what they're doing. So why is it any different with real estate?
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
No, thanks. That's great. I'm just starting to see it. I'm like, I know I just want to knock on the doors and say, you're making a big mistake here, but they'll change eventually. They'll go, eventually I'm going to see that sign from the realtor.
I think there's a continuum to this though. And so like John's talking about both sides, but I think most of the realtors are kind of in the middle, more towards, it's like everybody knows somebody in their family that's got their like realtor's license or something that sells like 1 or 2 houses a year. How many of those guys and girls are going to have a good marketing plan and be able to get the word out? Not that much. And then you have to pay. So to me, that is a waste of money. You should get somebody that's really good, that has high volume, that can really get a bunch of people to go through your house so you get a lot of bids, right?
Right. And and understand the right things about staging and photographs and what's going to actually draw those footsteps. There was a big debate on Facebook the other day with some agents, and one of the agent basically put out there that can we please get away from doing professional photos where they're manipulated so they look better than what the actual house does? And I thought, well, I had to make the argument. Now, I used to be a professional photographer, so immediately I'm like, like just because you go in and do the color corrections, you do the proper exposure adjustments, and you shoot and correct for parallax does not mean you're altering a house. It means you're putting best light. And any advertising marketing knows that you have to put best light. In real estate, the idea is to get people to walk in the front door. If they don't walk in the door, they're not going to buy it. So you have to make it look the best it can.
It's kind of like the old teaching argument of like teaching to the weakest link. And then what about all the other students that could learn faster? Or in our industry, it's like, well, some other firms like, we only made our clients 6% per year and you guys made 8%. So can you guys just like not make people as much money so we can live better?
There's a lot to be said for that too. Like I get on the soapbox much, but there are realtors that complain that they didn't get an opportunity on a house that their client wanted. Like it sold quicker than they could get over there to show it to them, sort of thing. Well, to me, it's like, again, you didn't deserve an opportunity. You had a chance to make an opportunity for them, but you didn't make that opportunity for them. And was it because you had a second job that you were supporting yourself, or you just didn't want to take the time to get them over there to see it, or whatever? You're right. You want the agents that are producing a lot that do it full time. There's, I think, I don't even know what the count is right now. It's well over 8,000 licensed agents in Central Ohio. Yeah. So, and in it, like any industry, the top 5 or 10% do 90% of the business.
Well, thanks for being with us again, John, and thanks for sponsoring our golf tournament 3rd year in a row. And you've helped multiple of our clients buy and sell houses. You're personally helping me buy and sell a house right now. And we don't refer to you because you kick back or you do this. It's because you actually do an awesome job for our clients. And I can't even tell you, you're one of the main people that we refer to that our clients are actually like, thank you for introducing me to John Lubinsky and his team. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to golfing.
That's going to be fun. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be hot, but it'll be good.
Yeah, always a good time. You guys put on a great event.
Good
and
deal.
It's all 30, so there you go.
Right. And we try to get it out there early. So check out our golf.rebelfinancial.com. Check out our event on Eventbrite. If you can't make it this year, sign up for next year. We got an awesome sporting clays event coming up earlier next year. And I think we're going to have a Halloween open house. So there's all kinds of events. Come and join us. It's going to be great. Supports good causes, and you can get to know us and our great partners that are out there trying to help people be more financially successful.
Awesome.
All right, John, we'll see you in a bit.
All right. Everybody take care. Happy
Good.
weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
I know.